The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
In the absence of Mecky, you're back with David Mecky's Shiny Side Out on Revolution Radio, the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for free. They're free. Get yourself some merch. Talk to us in the chat room. You can do all those things. It's actually pretty cool. And the archives are fantastic, Mecky. They are. And I'm going to thank you very much for listening to us on Revolution Radio. It means a lot to Becky and I. This is show number 642. This is the second hour of the show. We are talking about the parasitic system, fiat currency, and fractional reserve lending. This is part 10 of this series, this show arc. And we're talking today about money creation, and this is an economist's view. And Mecky, would you like to give us a rundown?
I'm back.
I know.
Get off mute. You believe that? That's just
nuts. I saw that.
Oh, jeez. Thanks, Dave. Thanks. We are indeed coming. Probably. Oh, let me see.
We'll probably
maybe not the last. Oh, maybe the last. No, it won't be the
close.
Last. There's still some. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, look, we're talking about, parasitic system, finances, etc. No time more pressing than the present, obviously. Interestingly enough, before we go into today's show, I listened to a lot of analyses recently, as Dave has surely done as well, reading up quite a bit, or devouring the financial papers, as much as that is possible. But the interesting thing is this. A lot of analysts, this is not just happening in Australia, but a lot of analysts are now saying, you know what, maybe interest rates aren't the right tool for this crisis. Well, something that, Dave, we've been saying this for a long time now.
I know, right?
And in fact, it's correct. Now, in Australia specifically, the Federal Reserve, our Reserve Bank of Australia, I should say, not federal, but the Reserve Bank of Australia, the RBA, not federal, really controls, the only thing it does is control interest rates. That's all it does. That's all it does. Doesn't really control the money supply, doesn't control monetary policy, doesn't control any of the other things, has no say in price fixing, in intervention programs when it comes to profiteering, none of that. All they can do is play with interest rates. And in our particular situation, and this was explained beautifully by an expert, not as beautifully as Bas, but I'll repeat it anyway. Right now, interest rates are being raised. The purpose of that is to decrease the volume of money in the economy. Full stop. That's it. And once you've put it into deposits, if you're saving it, even if it's under your mattress, it's effectively out of the economy. It's no longer in there, right? And you have to do that in order to stabilize the balance between goods and services to be purchased and the purchasing instruments, such as money. If they go out of whack, so if you've got less goods and services than money, then you've got inflation, meaning people spend more money for the same thing, right? Because more people want it, theoretically. If you've got more goods and services than money, then things become relatively cheaper. There's like an oversupply then, right? It's like a glut of things. Like, when people dump wine or whatever, it's very, very cheap.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a lot of it. And in comparison to again, the purchasing instruments such as money. Okay. So far, so good. Unfortunately, see, globally speaking, in Australia specifically, about a third of the population here, economically active population, has a mortgage. A third, roughly.
That's
a third,
right.
I think it is, right? Now, the only people that are affected then by this rate increase as far as mortgages are concerned are these people. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
People that have paid off their mortgage, they don't care. People that never had a mortgage, they don't care. Well, they care if they are renting, because of course there's a knock-on effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really that knock-on effect that's important to understand. If you punish a section of the population, mortgage holders in this case, they will stop spending on certain things. It'll just happen. Or if they are in fact owning investment properties as well, for argument's sake, right, they will increase rent, which make it harder for people that are renting out in the world to find a place to rent.
Yeah.
The other thing, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. The other thing in Australia is our intake of migrants.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Something again the Reserve Bank can't control, but we are letting too many people in. Now, I'm not being anti-migration at all. Being a migrant myself, that's not the problem. The problem is that we don't have enough housing units, houses, apartments, whatever, to cater for all these people. We just don't have enough. Plus, we also allow foreign investment. So this is for people that don't necessarily want to live in Australia, but they want to invest here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So there are a number of factors which make our situation worse, and none of which can be addressed by the Reserve Bank, only by government. But government doesn't want to address it. We are making the situation in Australia specifically much, much worse by doing what we're doing. Much worse. In fact, it will never get better. It will never get better, full stop. Can't. Why? Because it's not addressing the root problem. The root problem here is multifaceted. One of them is volume of money. That's globally, that's a problem. Right? But the other problem here is how we are controlling, or rather not controlling, the housing market in Australia. That's a big, big, big problem that we're having. And nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to address it. Nobody has got the political will. Because the only people that can make a meaningful difference now to the economic life of Australians are the government, or the governments, both state and federal, but definitely federal. But nobody has the appetite.
That's right.
And globally speaking, the issues is the same, though the underlying and connected challenges might vary from economy to economy. The fundamental issue is this: there's too much money in the economy. Now, you think, okay, well, that's easily fixed, just don't put any more money in. Well, yes, good, except that's not happening. The governments of the world are printing money like it's going out of fashion.
That's right.
Okay. What can we do? Well, we've got a deficit. Print more money! Yay! Raise the, in American terms, raise the debt ceiling. That's what that means. Mm-hmm. Okay? And because if you don't do that, the government stops. And then all these government employees don't get paid, and then the whole country stops, etc., etc.
We haven't done that.
Nah.
America has done that. We haven't.
We don't have to. But in America, yeah, the debt ceiling. Well, because people go, oh, they raise the debt ceiling. Just raise the debt ceiling. Well, the consequence of that is that you put a lot more money into the economy. Again, relative to the goods and services that are available to be purchased.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And fundamentally, you don't have to be a genius, although it helps if you were, to understand any of this. It does take a lot of will, though, to fix it. And you know what? Just like 2008, nobody wants to fix any of this, Dave.
No,
nobody has got any interest. Right? And see, there's this fallacy as well. There's a huge fallacy that people operate under. Whenever it comes to a crash, the dot-com crash, the crash back in 23, right? The world the world economic crisis, and the crashes of 2008, the crash in the 80s, I think it's Black Friday, right? Anyway, all of these crashes, right, where we saw stock markets and economies and the currencies tumble and fall and be completely destroyed, even people have this misunderstanding or this misperception that this money just disappears, right? All of this, all this wealth that was created has all of a sudden gone poof, and it's gone.
Yep.
That's not true.
It's not true
at all. It goes somewhere else. So let me put it this way. Right? Very simply put, if you play in the stock market, you buy a stock that's worth $100. I don't care, whatever. IBM. Hey, IBM. Okay, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, right? So, sorry, it's not an IT joke. So you buy $100 worth of IBM shares, right? And then something horrible happens, and IBM loses its share value. It's now worth $1. That's what the market says. Right? Mm-hmm. You bought it for 100. So let's say you got you got a share of a very specific share of IBM, and the market says that share that you have is now worth $1. Now, if you sell your paper, your actual share for $1, then for you, that is true.
That's right.
Become now the truth, right? So you've
You
sold
lose
it.
99. Yeah.
Bingo. But you know what? When you sell it, then somebody buys it. It's not
That's
like
right.
it just goes into the ether, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for that person, they paid $1. But if IBM recovers even by $1, they've made $1. They've made 100% profit on what you sold.
Yeah.
Right? You've had a massive loss, right? I mean, for you, your savings, your wealth was wiped out potentially, right? For the person that bought up what you were selling, not so much. And see, companies never completely disappear either. Yes, they go bankrupt, but then there's a whole procedure there, bankruptcy courts. Some people go to jail, some people are made to pay out stuff, assets are sold, etc., etc. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens. So to ensure that nobody actually walks away empty-handed. Now it can happen. Don't get me wrong, it can happen, but by and large, wealth is not lost. It is just moved from one pocket to another, and that's what happened in 2008. Right? It's not like all this money disappeared. No. See, the banks, this was just in the United States, other countries were similar. The United States bought all the toxic assets, for I think it was even for the face value.
Yeah.
I got to double check that. I mean, that's just horrendous. But let's say that. So the government ate whatever losses there were. The government took responsibility. The banks were fine. They had money, and that money came from you, Mr. Taxpayer. That's who paid for it. You did. Did you see any benefit from that? No, you didn't.
No.
And you never will. Okay? Because that was the game. Too bad for you. The biggest redistribution of wealth we've ever seen, ever.
Yeah.
So, sorry, because I needed to clear that up. Because people have this misperception of what actually happens in the economy. But why don't we, Dave, why don't you start at least with money creation? It's an abridged article, but it's important to understand. Actually, you can have the whole thing, my friend.
Thank you very much, Becky. The standard story about how banks create money and how reserves work is the money multiplier model. Money creation starts with the government injecting fiat money into the economy, say by giving a welfare recipient $100 in cash. That recipient then deposits the cash in a bank, which hangs onto a government mandated fraction of it, the reserve requirement, say 10% or 10% or $10, and lends out the rest to a borrower. The borrower then deposits that $90 into another bank, which does the same thing, hangs on to 10% of the $90 or $9 and lends out another 81 to another borrower, and so on and so forth. This process repeats ad infinitum, and in the end a total of $1,000 is brought into existence. The original $100 in cash plus $900 in credit money created by the private banking sector, matched of course by $900 in debt. The alleged system known as fractional reserve banking is seen as fraud by the Austrian economists and by many in the public to inflationists, because Bernanke has hit the printing presses, dramatically increasing base money, and therefore money in circulation will soon explode, leading to hyperinflation. The neoclassical economist: it's just the way banking works. Bank lending is controlled by the Fed because, in inverted commas, air quotes here, even if banks hold no reserves, end quote. Fed control over the currency means that private banks must do what the Fed wants. And to anyone who's done empirical research, it's a myth. The most recent proof of this is in an excellent discussion paper from Federal Reserve economist Carpenter and Demiralp, entitled Money, Reserves, and the transmission of monetary policy. Does the money multiplier exist? The first clue that it doesn't exist is given by their abstract, which notes that, quote, before the financial crisis, reserve balances were roughly 20 billion, end quote. If the textbook model were correct, the total stock of money in the US would be 200 billion versus the multi-trillion-dollar level of even a narrow definition of the money stock. As the authors note, this makes a mockery of the textbook, air quotes, money multiplier model. M2 averaged about 7.25 trillion in 2007. Bank loans for 2007 were about 6.25 trillion. If we consider the fact that reserve balances held at the Federal Reserve were about 15 billion and required reserves were about 43 billion, the tight link drawn in the textbook transmission mechanism from reserves to money and bank lending seems all the more tenuous. If the money multiplier model doesn't really describe how money is created and how reserves figure in this, what does? The shorter answer is endogenous money. Bank lending creates deposits, so the decisions of the bank to provide loans determine the level of money, and the reserves are largely irrelevant. Mekki.
That is pretty much true, right? The next article is from 2013, and stand correct. Oh, actually, we might be able to make it. 2013 by Matthias Chang of the Global Research Center, November 1, 2013. The entire fiat money system is bankrupt. The demise of the global US fiat dollar reserve currency. This was 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Okay. Major issues or trends do not change on a daily or even monthly basis. A trend may take a few years to run its course, and unless there's a major factor that may affect the trend, there's hardly any need to comment any further on the trend or outcomes. The events unraveling post-Bernanke's decision not to taper QE is most significant because it confirms our analysis that the banking crisis has not been resolved in any significant way after 5 years of money printing and massive asset inflation. The fiat money system has but one outcome: total collapse. It would also mean the demise of the global US dollar reserve currency. There are no solutions at hand. Now, there is a solution at hand, or two in fact, or maybe even more, but one of them, of course, is digital currency. The other one is total war. But let's hope it's the digital currency that wins on that one. Bernanke is totally discredited in his continued tenure as chair of the Fed. This was in 2013, mind you, yeah, 2013. Of the Fed would only accelerate the realization that the Fed and all central banks have failed. Hence, the need to change the leadership at the Fed. But the same policies would be followed with some cosmetic changes to hoodwink the ignorant masses. That's all of us, everybody. It is analogous. It's analogous to the transition from the second Bush presidency to that of Obama and all the theatrics of change propaganda. In fact, Obama is Bush 2 on steroids. Yellen will be Bernanke on steroids. Why are we so certain of this outcome at Future Fast Forward? Our reasons are as follows. Prior to the global financial tsunami of 2008, that's very poetic, the author had written several articles exposing the global too big to fail TBFT, TBTF banks as financial rapists and predators, and they would cause untold havoc to the financial system. I have to say that again. Prior to the global financial tsunami of 2008, the author had written several articles exposing the global too big to fail banks as financial rapists and predators, and they would cause untold havoc to the financial system. That's one of the most beautiful paragraphs I think I've ever read. Post the crisis, the author had also warned that these global too big to fail banks were all insolvent and the toxic assets on their balance sheets would exceed $20 trillion at the minimum. Yeah, I know. The entire fiat money system is bankrupt. Printing toilet paper money by the trillions does not make the system solvent. It is a clear admission that the system is totally broken. The banking Humpty Dumpty has fallen from the wall and shattered into 1,000 pieces. I know, right? The confirmation for this is the fact that all central banks, led by the Fed, have only one aim: to create massive asset inflation. How can a stock market of a bankrupt nation be at an all-time high? The Fed and central banks the world over are not interested in resolving the unemployment problem because record unemployment would not collapse the fiat money system. It may trigger massive social unrest, but that can be put down by a militarized police force, supported by a battle-hardened military, as is happening or was happening back in 2003 in the US.
Mm-hmm.
In the circumstances, we need to ask the US trillion-dollar question. Why are all the central banks focusing on asset inflation via creation of money out of thin air? The answer? The fiat money system is the economy, stupid. Let me say this again. The fiat money system is the economy, stupid. Dave?
Yeah, totally. It used to be that the petrodollar was the linchpin in the global economy. However, when the derivatives market took off and became a 800 trillion global casino, the US dollar toilet paper became the currency in global financial trading and speculation. All the too big to fail banks were leveraged to their eyeballs, and the collateral were hypothecated and re-hypothecated so many times over. It became an inverted pyramid joke. The collaterals were bundled up into CDOs, etc., and rated AAA by corrupt rating agencies and traded. We need not repeat this old story. The point we are making here is that not only are the collaterals junks, but they are supporting a mountain of debts in the trillions. Therefore, when collaterals are impaired by the too big to fail banks, are in a hole from which they cannot get out. The Fed and other central banks have no choice but to fail out the too big to fail banks if a systemic failure is to be avoided. If all the junk collaterals were to be offloaded at once in the full glare of public scrutiny, there would be a run on all the banks. I bet that's the phrase that was used to get the funding from the government. So, what was required was a stealth rescue effort. The too big to fail banks were allowed to unload the junk collaterals bit by bit by the various schemes of the Fed, culminating in 85 billion a month purchases of treasury bonds and mortgages by the Fed. Additionally, newly minted collaterals were used to replace the junk so as to clean up the balance sheets for the too big to fail banks. The author has stated earlier that the minimum amount of toxic assets needed to be mopped up is 20 trillion. After 5 years, the Fed had just scratched the surface. It is debatable how many US trillions the Fed has actually pumped into the system directly and indirectly. How much and how long more can the Fed continue to pump US toilet paper into the system without creating a massive loss of confidence in the dollar? When the balance sheet of the Fed reaches 7 trillion or maybe 10 trillion, it is anybody's guess. For sure, there will be a point when another 100 billion is created on top of the stash of US dollar toilet papers, which will tip the scale and collapse the entire system. It is a catch-22 for the Fed. If it stops creating fiat money out of thin air, the fiat money system would collapse immediately. If it continues with more money creation, it merely postpones the inevitable and more devastating endgame. This is the price we all have to pay for our allowing the fiat money system to hold sway for so long. I would inject hold so much sway for so long. Mekki.
Great. The world was conned into accepting the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of banking and finance, the US Global Reserve Currency Ponzi scheme. This scheme was created on a sandcastle of debt, specifically US Treasury bonds. The world does not need a global reserve currency. Global trade can be conducted in any currency in accordance to the needs and resources of a country. Why should there be a specific privilege given to only one country to have its currency as the sole reserve currency for purposes of trade? It makes no sense, as it is the result of US imperialist policies under the pretext of the Cold War. The con was based on the propaganda that the US dollar should be the preferred currency and the US Treasury bond is the safest asset to have in the event of an outbreak of war between the Western imperialist camp and the Soviet bloc. We were told this arrangement was necessary if we are to enjoy the protection of the mighty US superpower. Yet, when the Soviet bloc collapsed, no one questioned the need to perpetuate the system. Another spin was propagated. The US was the linchpin in the new era of globalization, as the US market was the biggest consumer/export market. Everyone was caught in this web of deceit. The US market was a market built on a mountain of debt. Adding insult to injury, the US consumers paid for the goods produced by millions, breaking their backs with US dollar toilet paper money. Some so-called currency experts have asserted that no other currency can replace the US dollar toilet paper as the global reserve currency because no other country has a bond market like the US bond market, dominated by the US Treasury bonds. What an idiotic statement. If a country is not in debt, there is no need for any bonds to be issued. A bond is an IOU. A bond is a mere paper pledge to repay a debt. And anyone who says and continues to perpetuate the myth that the US debt is a better debt and is more secure is ignorant and misinformed. Why would anyone want to work and produce goods which are sold and paid in US dollar toilet paper money and then use the surplus US toilet paper money to lend to the US government, who repays the debt by merely printing more US toilet paper money? So do you still think the world needs a US toilet paper money as a reserve currency? I just want to say that this article was written, about 10, 11 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I agree with most of the assertions here, but I think it's a little more complex because it is not just in the US's interest.
That's right.
To prop up the US dollar, but rather all the power brokers of all the countries that have invested so much in it, like in Saudi Arabia, others,
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, though,
they're all the interested parties, Mekki.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. Nothing to do with national interests or the country's interests. These are personal interests of people, right? Mm-hmm. Interestingly, though, Israel some years ago asked for the euro to be paid in aid money rather than US dollars. And I also understand the era of the petrodollar is coming to an end.
Saudi Arabia has now said they're going to use BRICS, no longer the US dollar.
Yeah, so now that is actually,
it's a destabilizing function.
Yeah. So this is what the news outlets have to say. News outlets have reported that a 1974 agreement with Saudi Arabia and the US, commonly known as the petrodollar deal, was not renewed and concluded on June 9, 2024. That's 21
correct.
Days ago.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't seen what that means yet. but it's
How much borrowed money is going to Ukraine? I'm not arguing for or against it, and to Israel. I mean, in the form of weapons, but it's the money's getting printed and being given to Halliburton, Raytheon, BAE, all the big weapons productions companies, and it's just been printed and given to them. Oh, and what's the other point about bonds, Mekki, that we've learned, and that is you're not allowed to pay back your bond debt.
Oh, well, you can't. If you do that, all
your economy is gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Like if you look at it from a common sense perspective, you'd think that paying off debt is a good thing, right?
That's right.
It's not.
Yeah.
Because all we're doing is we're swapping IOUs to each other. That's all we're doing. We're swapping IOUs.
Right.
But you know what worries me is this. Two things that worry me. So number one is I do agree that this will collapse at some point, because the only way to keep it alive is to print more money, which is exactly what we've been seeing. We print more money. Now we're in a fairly significant inflation crisis, right? And the only way to stop this crisis is to stop printing money. But if we stop printing money, then the whole system collapses. So inflation will rise, unemployment will rise, because it just happens that way. Because if things get more expensive, companies will lay off people. That's just what happens, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't solve the underlying fundamental issue of volume of money in the economy, right? And so we print more money. So inflation is going to rise. It is a death spiral. Now, the one thing here which significantly complicates matters is the petrodollar. It's done. It's finished. So the question now becomes, okay, what does that mean, though? I mean, so because the stability and the value of the US dollar is directly based upon it being the single currency used in exchange to buy petroleum, oil.
That's right.
There's nothing else, because back in the 70s, when Nixon did away with the gold standard and tied himself to the petrodollar.
That's right.
That's when it all changed. So, but if it's no longer the standard for that, then we will see, in my opinion, a fairly significant decline in the value of the US dollar once the markets realize all of this, right? And once the first transactions, I mean, I'm talking about big transactions of oil purchases, are undertaken in currencies other than the US dollar. Once that starts happening, then we will see a fairly significant devaluation of the US dollar. Or not, because it might be artificially propped up. The thing is this, though. It's like this Dutch legend of the little boy, and he spots a hole, like a little nick in the dike. A dike is just something that holds the water back.
It's a dam.
It's a dam. And he puts his finger in, and another hole pops open. He puts his other finger in, and a toe, and another toe. But eventually, the little boy will run out of toes and fingers to plug the hole, and that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I don't really hold a lot of US dollar assets. I've got a few dollars here and there, but if anybody has significant amounts of US dollar currency, or bonds for that matter, it might be a good idea to sell them. It's just my opinion, because
no financial advice is being given out here.
Oh no, of course not. Of course not. What do I know? But don't come crying to me when it happens, right?
But do your own research.
Yeah, absolutely. No, look, the truth is that there are forces at work which worry me a lot. And one of the ways out here is to have a digital currency. That would be useful. Another, and this is my least favorite option, is a war. Because after a war, you can have all kinds of currency reforms. When Germany lost World War II, there was a new currency that came into effect. I think it was in 1949, right? The old currency was gone. Many other countries had currency reforms, some occasioned by war, others, by hyperinflation. But eventually, you need a currency reform. It's just, you have to. You can only do it for so long, the artificial propping up, that is. America has been doing this for a long time now, and it was only able to do that because it was tied to oil. And because it was such a massive economy, 300 million people, a lot of natural resources, a lot of manufacturing, IP, etc., etc., and just look to what lengths the Americans are going to protect the industry, right? But when that all unravels, it'll be catastrophic.
Look, we have seen this before. I mean, the British pound was being used before the US dollar. Yeah, and before then we had, a long time ago, we had, Roman currency was the currency of the world. There is only, though, Becky, I mean, I'm going to make this point for the listeners so they're not all panicking. It's a comparative strength. You're only as strong as you are against, like visibly seen to be strong, as you are against those who oppose you. It isn't that you're ultimately untouchable. No, you're not a god. Not talking about you, Mackie. The currency itself is not a god. There isn't a way. There is a way. They are fallible. They are only rated against each other, and that's what currency exchanges used to do before they were found to be, colluding in profiteering on currency exchange. But we only saw that light of day when they had to fire one person for that, and the rest, it didn't matter anymore, right? So in the comparative strength, as you see the shift for the most commonly used commodity in the world, and it's energy, when you see that shift being forced upon you, then your comparative strength weakens. And if that aligns people or makes another currency stronger in comparison, then what are you going to do? And I know I just said everything you said, but I've said it in another way. And that's really, I think, if you're an American, if you're holding American currency, you have to be able to see this. However, Mackie, I'm going to throw something in there. Digital currency. So the CBDCs, yeah. So the central bank digital currency, which has not been announced officially and launched. It's been announced to say that they're going to do it. Everyone's signed up to it. All the countries that I know have signed up to it, that they're going to do it. But this transition period, it stops the fiat currency magic from occurring, and it just makes numbers in a computer and no one cares anymore. That's all that happens. And I see a change away from this, Ponzi scheme to being it doesn't matter anymore. It's that idealism that the founders of America had before the British imposed all the taxes. And the economy just ran perfectly. We didn't have any debt. What debt? You don't need debt. We read that out early on, a number of shows ago, Mackie.
Correct. 100%. 100%.
So we've got one story, two stories left.
Fallacy. Go on.
Yeah, we have two stories left to read.
Yeah, but we do. It's a fallacy. See, we've been brought up to believe that all of this is necessary for economic life. That's completely wrong. The economy would work just fine without debt. In fact, it would work a lot better without debt. But yeah, you're right. There's Musk. This is an article from 2021. Dave?
Yeah. So Musk tweets he supports crypto in battle against fiat currencies. Good on him. Elon Musk is again, this is from 2021, May 22nd. Musk is again tweeting about technology and cryptocurrencies. And this time he's clear on where his support is at. In a thread started by Musk himself comparing magic to technology, where someone asked what he thought about people, in inverted commas, who are angry at you because of crypto, the Tesla Inc. CEO tweeted that the true battle is between fiat and crypto. On balance, I support the latter, being crypto. Bitcoin rose after Musk's post and was trading at around 38,700. as of 9:32 a.m. New York time. This was on May 22nd, 2021. Musk has made similar comments before, including in December when he tweeted that Bitcoin is almost as BS as fiat money. In February, he elaborated to say that when fiat currency has negative real interest, only a fool wouldn't look elsewhere. Former US Treasury Secretary Lawrence H. Summers recently compared crypto to gold as a safe haven asset. But he said he doesn't expect customers to turn to Bitcoin for most of their payments, even though it could become an important part of e-commerce. My aside on this, it takes 20 minutes or more to make a transaction go through in Bitcoin. And it's so large a record that you've got to update now that it's in gigs. The blockchain is in gigs, and you've got to download it, make the update, and it's got to be sent back and then replicated everywhere. And there's so many transactions, it would become totally impossible to use Bitcoin as a transactional currency. So one that had a small lifespan is ultimately what you would do. Every time it went back into the holders of, say, the government or the banks or someone, whoever is going to deal with it, the Fed, it would then zero out the transactions. And that's the only way to have a high spend, high turnover currency. So early in the week, Musk had tweeted that he won't be selling any Dogecoin. And he also posted a cryptic image of a dollar bill with a Shiba Inu dog replacing the face of former US president. Bitcoin ended the week in volatile territory after a new warning from Chinese officials over cracking down on cryptocurrencies. The earlier sell-off on Friday, back then in May 22, 2021, Friday hit Bitcoin believers still fuming after Musk did an about face and criticized the token for its energy usage.
And that's something that is interesting as well. We should spend just a couple of moments on the two things which are adding significant load on our electricity consumption on the planet, and therefore, I guess, the supposed carbon footprint. One is cryptocurrency. It's huge. The second is AI. So cryptocurrency and AI consume a lot of energy. People think it's hilarious. I saw this little meme photo of a Tesla or some electric car broken down at the emergency charging station was a diesel generator.
That's right.
So the diesel generator, he generated the electricity to charge the Tesla car. I thought that was gold. But that's sort of where we are. You see, I mean, the thing is, both AI and cryptocurrency, while ephemeral in substance, so you can't really touch them. It's not real. It's not really real. It's in the cyberspace. It's in the computer. Mm-hmm. There are files in the computer. In the computer. yes, they're in the computer. It becomes a truism that people don't realize just how much energy is being consumed. Right? This is really the kicker here.
And it's not free. It isn't free energy.
Of course it's free. Everything is free, Dave. Everything is free. But you're right. Of course it isn't free.
Yeah.
But see, people, they're buying. See, people still believe that buying an electric car is good for the environment. People still believe that.
I don't know how. Yeah. They bought the shiny, glossy brochure, hook, line, and sinker, and copy of Angling Times. The whole thing, and I just don't understand how they can live with themselves.
Look, because they don't understand how it all hangs together. This is the problem, right? People don't, and this is what I try to teach my children. Look at the underlying truth. Just look at what is behind it. Don't take the face value stuff. Just understand more. Understand all of it, right down to the foundation. Look, I'm going to share the last article very quickly. It's not very long. It's a couple of paragraphs. And this was written March 26, 2024 by Rainer de Best. and it's an estimate of the monthly number of cryptocurrency users worldwide between 2016 and 2023. Always bearing in mind that the reason it's here partially is because I want people to be aware just how much energy is going to be consumed by this thing, right? The global user base of cryptocurrencies increased by nearly 190% between 2018 and 2020, only to accelerate further in 2022. This is according to calculations from various sources based on information from trading platforms and on-chain wallets. Increasing demographics might initially be attributed to a rise in the number of accounts and improvements in identification. In 2021, however, crypto adoption continued as companies like Tesla and MasterCard announced their interest in cryptocurrency. Consumers in Africa, Asia, and South America were most likely to be an owner of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin in 2022. How many of these users have Bitcoin? User figures for individual cryptocurrencies are unavailable. Bitcoin, for instance, was created not to be tracked by banks and governments. What comes closest is the trading volume of Bitcoin against domestic fiat currencies. The source assumed, however, that UK residents were the most likely to make Bitcoin transactions with British pounds. This assumption might not be accurate for popular fiat currencies worldwide. On top of that, coins such as Tether or Binance Coin, referred to as stable coins, are often used to buy and sell Bitcoin. Those coins were not included in that particular statistic. Wallet usage decline. Total crypto wallet downloads were significantly lower in 2022 than in 2021. The number of downloads of Coinbase, Blockchain.com, and MetaMask, among others, declined as the market hit a crypto winter over the year. The crypto market also suffered bad press when FTX, one of the largest crypto exchanges based on market share, collapsed. We all remember that in November of 22. Binance, on the other hand, regained some of the market share it had lost between September and October 22, growing by 0.8% in November. Now, what this is showing is it's a fairly significant trend of more and more uptake of cryptocurrencies. Fundamentally, I'm not against cryptocurrencies. The problem is once they become institutionalized and used by governments and more worryingly by banks, the controls we have in place now, such as they are, which not great, but there are some, will completely disappear. You will no longer have to print money.
That's right.
It'll be a thing. Yeah, it'll be a thing of the past. In fact, most developed economies, Australia pretty much at the forefront, believe it or not, will cease to use cash altogether.
Yeah.
That has a raft of issues, massive problems. And I predict a rise of an underground economy, which will be most likely barter, goods and services, or bartered between people, and not necessarily to avoid, cryptocurrencies or digital currencies.
It'll just be the availability of it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be ease of use.
That's
right?
correct.
And if I live in an Australian country town, all right, which already suffers from a cash flow deficit because they're closing the banks, then it makes sense to start this sort of bartering economy. It just makes sense because your neighbor, been there for 50 years.
Yeah.
They do this, you do that. If you watch programs like what is it called, River Cottage, Little River Cottage, it's like this program in the UK, but there's one in Australia, right? That was started as well, and you could see these economies existing. Like this guy was a smallholder, and he would barter with his neighbors for ducks or for pigs or for seeds or for work. Mm-hmm. And one hand washes the other, and it works really well. Yeah. No money was exchanged. No money. This was services and goods that went from hand to hand. And I predict that this kind of economy is only going to grow. It's certainly in third world nations, but most definitely in first world nations that are going entirely digital. 100%.
So Meki, I know through my ex-wife what communism in Eastern Bloc countries at the time, with their scarcity, how they dealt with going to the store and not being able to get it. There was a complete black market for jeans and shoes and food. I say jeans because at the time the most sought after pants in the world were Levi jeans, and Reeboks and Nikes were in the next group, and because they were sought after. That made it self-developed. It was a thing that sprung out of the need because they weren't available in stores. You can imagine the joke of put out on Red Dwarf that you have to line up for months to get a bicycle that goes forward, let alone one that goes backwards. That was a joke from them, and that's what we're going to see. This at the moment. I was talking with some friends of mine last night. They said, we went to the bank the other day and we had to get some cash out to pay our builder because he was going to, the builder was going down to the store to buy the parts, the materials, and went to the bank and needed like $8,000 for some renovation they were doing, and they said, well, what are you going to use the money for? I go, is it important? And we've had a declaration I think last month, that bank checks are going to get phased out. That's where you walk into the bank and you say, I need a bank check to go and hand my lawyer for a transaction of buying a house or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's being phased out. Checks are
in
already...
favour of what?
No, of nothing. It's just direct transfer.
Really?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if you look at it, just look it up while we're talking, and you'll see. So, you're now in Australia. Even if you're depositing money into your own account, they'll ask you, "Well, where'd you get the money from?" If you say it's a gift, you can get taxed on gifts. Who's the gift from? Do I have to tell you? I went to the horses. I bet on the horses, maybe, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
So. If you win it at a casino, it's meant to be declared. So at the moment, they want to know where it's all going, and this is only maybe like it's a window on the future of digital currency, where they know every single cent that goes through the digital currency system. They know where it came from, they know where it went to, and they'll know the purpose of that. So I can see how a black market would be hard to deal with digital currency, because you'd know who was selling stuff. It would be completely evident in the data.
Do you know what I would say if they asked me?
What?
Like, let's say I paid, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I paid $10,000 for argument's sake in my account, right?
Yeah.
And it's, where'd you get the money from? Oh, that's just my fee. Oh, fee for what? Well, I'm a contract killer. That's what I charge. I want to see their face then.
Yeah, there was a person I saw a YouTube clip of, and they said when they were depositing, they were asking for the money out of their account. They said it was from a breast augmentation.
Oh, really?
And this is what they said in the thing. It's very funny. They've made a video meme, and the person says, the person taking the money out says to the bank clerk, "Can you note in there double D?" Is there a comment section? Can you put that in there? Yeah. To provide more detail than was required, I think, was the joke around that.
And pink nipples is what I want. It's
it's
really pink.
So, I think we've gone into this and no one's in the street protesting.
No. Interesting.
Why aren't we arguing against it? That still has my head spinning. I don't know. We're so compliant. Sure, that's just the way it is, Mackie. That's the way it is. What are we going to do? I don't know. Protest.
Just keep feeding your little frontal lobotomy. Just keep feeding it.
They let you keep the bit they cut out.
Hello. Hello. How do you do? That's funny. That is funny.
So, if they, I don't think it's going to be a tremendous place we go to. And plus, once you've got digital currency, Maggie, this is to wind out this. You can imagine that they could pay
Oh,
you. They could pay you in money that actually has a use-by date.
Yes, that's true. That is absolutely true. Isn't that hilarious? Think about that for a second. What?
Just like those vouchers we got from the New South Wales government, remember, during COVID.
Yeah. You got 2 years to use them or something, right?
Yeah. Just imagine you get paid and you have to spend the money. It's the only way to keep the economy going. You can't save it. Saving it's wrong. It doesn't do the purpose we want. It doesn't fulfill the purpose. And this is the big worry. This is the big worry about digital currency. Oh, there's the music. My goodness me. Look, stay tuned for Jer Bear's Awesome Show After Dark. And Mecky and I will be back for breakfast, 7 a.m. breakfast Eastern American time, for Plato's Cave, Tuesday and Thursday, 7 a.m. Do like, share, comment, and subscribe to our videos. And, ultimately, we just want you to be safe.